Much for showing up to watch this video. I am Tracy Dickens. I am a psychologist and I am the person who produces videos on Sweet Joyful Soul. Historically, it has been a channel that has provided mental health education that is linked to faith based content as well. Last year, I was diagnosed with two vestibular disorders, and it threw my world into a bit of a spin, and I am still recovering from that spin, literally. and I just really wanted to do something to keep me connected to God because He really has sustained me and provided for me through this whole process. And I'm at the place now where it'd be really easy for me just to get discouraged and frustrated and just kind of check out. And I don't want to do that. And historically, Psalm 119 has been my go to in seasons like this. And I thought this time I would do something even a little bit different. Instead of just studying it on my own, I would bring my thoughts about Psalm 119 and what I'm gaining and insights, I would bring them to you. So you could also learn from it as well. And hopefully it will feed your soul as well. So before we dive in, before we, oh, one more thing before I actually break into prayer. The other thing that I'm also doing with talking about Psalm 119 is that I will also be presenting a recipe every video. That's why there's all this stuff on the countertop here, is because my friends are always telling me they want to learn how I bake things and how I cook things. And I was teaching my niece at one point in time through video, much like this. And I thought, well, this would be a great time. And before I got sick, I was starting a business for cookies. And a lot of my cookies were named after people in the Bible because I had this plan to do little pamphlets so people could learn more about who the cookie was named after. And so I thought, well, this is kind of perfect. I want to talk about Psalm 119, and I have these cookies that are biblically based. So why not bring the two together? So that's what we're going to be doing here. But before we dive into talking about Psalm 119 and I explain what these ingredients are for, I am going to pray us in and then we'll get started. Dear God, thank you so much for this opportunity to just get to glorify you and to learn more about you. So, and not just to know more about you, but to know you, to build a relationship with you. I just ask that you show up in a bold way in this time and just place your glory and your wisdom into this space. Decrease me and increase you. I want people to see you. I want them to laugh and enjoy things, and really learn something. But more than anything, I want them to be excited about having an encounter with you. Also, I want to pray for the people that are affected by this historic winter storm. I know there are first responders and there are people who have to get out on the road, or maybe they've gotten out on the road and they've been harmed. I just ask that you watch over us, give people wisdom, put your hedge of protection around people and people who are without power. And may you restore their power. And until you do, just provide your peace and your comfort. And I pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so before I tell you what these ingredients are about, I want to explain why Psalm 119. There are a lot of really unique, special things about Psalm 119, and I want to make sure I set the groundwork for that before we dive into the cookie, because again, we're here to celebrate and honor God. So, if you're not familiar with Psalm 119, it is the longest chapter in the Bible. It has 176 verses. That is long. And depending on some of the translations, Psalm 119 is in the middle of the Bible. Sometimes 118 is in the middle, so it kind of depends on the translation. But it's the longest with 176 verses. And it has a very unique structure. It is an acrostic alphabet structure, meaning it is it has 22 8-line stanzas, and each of those stanzas have one of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet as the first letter for every line in that stanza. Meaning, the first 8 lines we're going to be talking about today, they are Aleph. And so if you could see these 8 lines written in Hebrew, you would see the Aleph character at the beginning of each one of those lines. So, so it makes it very unique. So just imagine that for those 8 lines, you have the Aleph. For the next 8 lines, it's Bet. For the next 8 lines, it's Gimel, and so on and so forth, covering the entire Hebrew alphabet. A lot of scholars think of this as the one chapter in the Bible that just glorifies God, shows you how to worship Him, how to praise Him, how to pray to Him, and just really shows you who God is and how we can come to Him and relate to Him. And if you study it diligently, you should walk away with a transformed heart. And the other unique thing, well, there's several unique things I'm going to share with you about this. Out of the 176 verses, 171 of those verses are connected to other verses in the Bible. Now, this is what the Bible does. The verses connect to each other, the Old Testament, the New Testament, New Testament, Old Testament. The Bible interprets itself. That's what it's known to do. But to have a chapter where almost every single line links to another line in the Bible, that is amazing. It also shows you just how diligent and how um, loving the psalmist is who wrote this, just to think how to connect and weave all these connections with this one chapter. The other thing that you will discover in Psalm 119 is that you'll see a lot of repeated words, such as word, laws, testimonies, statutes, commands, precepts, judgments, and way. And all these words, they are the different ways that God expresses himself to us, how he reveals his intentions, his love, his expectations, his righteousness, his holiness. These are the different forms that all of that comes through. And so you'll see that repeated over and over again. Now, I'm not going to take time to explain what each one of these words mean. If you want me to, I'll be more than happy to. I love words. So I'm all about going in and giving you the definitions, but I also just want to give a broader perspective and give you time to kind of have your own moment with the scripture. So whatever you're wanting, whatever you're needing, just let me know, jot it down there, and I'll be more than happy to make it happen. Um, Charles Spurgeon, he described Psalm 119 as the psalm that contains medicine to the varied spiritual diseases of man. And as we go through this, you will see that. I mean, there are passages that are about um, how to have a whole heart towards God, how to lament, how to grieve, what to do when you're afflicted, like how do you walk through a season of affliction, how do you celebrate, how do you praise. There's each stanza has a different purpose to it that really captures really any life experience you may have. The other really great thing about Psalm 119 is that a lot of people have, because they recognize how great it is, they have decided that they want to study it. They want to just spend time camping out in it. And Matthew Henry, when he was younger, his father was a pastor and he wanted his children to know God's word and to love God. And so he gave them the assignment every year to take one verse a day and just meditate on that verse. And so at the end of a year, they would have gone through Psalm 119 twice. And so to kind of give you an idea about whether this little project worked, this is the complete commentary for the Bible by Matthew Henry. So I think we could safely say that he is a man that fell in love with God's word and fell in love with God. So we're going into a book, into a chapter that just has a lot, it's just a treasure. And I hope that you love it as much as I do. And we're going to dive in. I'm going to switch over to all of that. I think that's all the big stuff I wanted to make sure I covered. Dot, 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 dot. Yes, it is. I got my little notes here to remind myself. Okay, so now that you know why I'm doing Psalm 119, a little bit about its history and how amazing it is. Oh, there's one other thing I forgot to mention about it. When you get to verse 4, verse 5, you'll see that the psalm kind of takes a transition and that it becomes more like a prayer versus a song or just making observations about God and who He is. And so a majority of Psalm 119 is a prayer. So this says a lot about the psalmist. So not only did they know God's word, did they revere God's word, and they loved God, but they also prayed to God, which is, I mean, amazing to have this great example in 176 verses. Okay, so now I will explain to you what we're doing here with all these ingredients on the countertop. So I thought the best thing to do if we're talking about Psalm 119, a great introduction baking assignment would be to make my David cookie. Because a lot of people believe that David was the one who wrote Psalm 119. Now, there are some scholars who say no, they think it was written after David's lifetime, but many of them believe some of the characteristics and some of the ways that God is talked about and revered kind of sounds very similar to some of the things that we hear in David's Psalms. So, regardless of who wrote it, I still thought that this was the perfect cookie for this particular psalm as just a whole, because the David cookie actually kind of was birthed from back in the day when I was in grad school and I didn't have a lot of money, poor grad student. I would make bakery boxes for my friends. And one holiday season, I made a bakery box. I believe it was two cookies, two candies, and like a cupcake or a brownie or something. At the end of the season, I had a lot of ingredients left, but it wasn't enough of any one ingredient to make the recipe again, but it was too much to throw away. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do with all these ingredients? It's like, oh, I know. I'm just going to put them in an oatmeal cookie. Oatmeal cookie dough is very forgiving. It's very friendly. It says, hey, come on in. And so I'll just toss it in there and see what I get. And that's what I did. And everybody loved it. And so it just became the cookie. And so here you have this cookie that is made up of all these individual yummy ingredients that made their own yummy dessert, but then when you put them together in one cookie, it made something even better, much like Psalm 119. You have these 22 stanzas that can stand alone, and you can walk away wiser and just feeling more seen and understood and understanding God more. But when you put all those 22 stanzas together, you get something pretty amazing. And if you're just thinking about David, he's constantly mentioned as the man after God's own heart. And that's exactly what Psalm 119 really tries to establish. It tries to set this tone of being a disciple, being a believer who's constantly seeking God. And David is a great example. He's not a perfect example, which we'll talk about, but he is a great example of how do you walk this out? Just being a human being. Okay? So hopefully you got all that. So now, well, what are we going to be putting together? So in my little bowl here, I have some butter, and we're doing an oatmeal cookie. Like I said, it's an everything oatmeal cookie. So before I kind of like tell you about all the ingredients, I do want to kind of give some baking tips because a lot of my friends will say, oh, I'm not really good at baking. I bake stuff and it just never turns out well. There's a lot of science to it. It's really hard. And so I want to try and dispel some of the anxiety and fears around baking. Now, I grew up cooking and baking with my mom and my grandmother all the time. So it's just second nature to me, but it has not always been that way. And over the years, I've just learned more and more about baking. And so I'm going to share, and each time we get together, I'm going to share a little bit so you can hopefully not only leave at the end of the year just feeling closer to God, but feeling more comfortable with baking. And so today's tips are going to be very basic. The first tip is that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes and just being okay with that. And the mistakes do not mean that you're a horrible baker or you don't get it or you just can never get it. A lot of times it's really just basic things like this butter. Not all butter is created the same. Some butter has more water, some has more cream, and so it's going to mix up differently. See here, I have some sugar. This is organic cane sugar. So it's going to have a different texture than regular sugar or sugar that has gone through a lot of processing. Let's see. I have flour over here. This is unbleached organic flour. Um, Unbleached flour, bleached flour, all-purpose flour, um, the baking flour. Like they all have different textures and different absorbencies. And if you don't know that, and you just get the ingredients, you get your recipe, and you throw it all in a bowl, and you're like, mine looks nothing like that. Well, you're not using the same ingredients that the recipe used, and so there's going to be some variations. And that doesn't mean you're a horrible cook. It just means you're using different ingredients. And so once you decide, this is my butter, this is my flour, this is my sugar, you just want to use those all the time. And then over time, you can figure out how you need to tweak, how to tweak the recipes so it fits you. Because I'm all about tweaking a recipe. My friends will ask me for the recipe and I'll show them the paper recipe and they're like, yeah, okay. But did you really do the recipe? And I'm like, well, I guess I did change some things up. And so I'm always doing it, even with baked goods, because once you know your ingredients, you can play around and you can have fun. It doesn't have to be so scary, but you just got to be okay with sometimes you're going to have duds, and it doesn't mean you're a horrible baker. It just means you have to learn your ingredients. And you may also need to learn your oven. I've had my oven on for about an hour now, preheating at 350. You don't need to preheat it for that long. But whenever you hear that little ding, ding, ding that tells you your oven is preheated at the temperature you set it for, it's lying. It's lying to you. Most ovens are not at that temperature, and you can get an oven thermometer that will let you know kind of how does my oven heat up? Is it slower? Is it warmer? And you'll get a sense of how does my oven bake, and that will also help you be more confident whenever you go to bake. Okay, enough of all the educational stuff. Let's get into the fun stuff. Okay, so I have my butter. And so now I'm going to, and my butter is room temperature. And room temperature butter, you'll see that a lot with recipes. That is because when you use room temperature butter, it binds with your sugar better. It allows more air to get in there. And the more air you can get into your butter and your sugar mixture, that's what gives you that lightness and that fluff that we like in cakes and in cookies where it just kind of melts in your mouth. So you want room temperature butter. If it's too cold, then the sugar can't bind with it. You can't get air in it. And then you get something that's kind of dense and just kind of, I don't know, just doesn't have a good bite to it. And if your butter is too soft, then you'll get something that's flat. Your cookies will just kind of spread out. They'll be kind of oily. Your cakes will just have a flatness to them. So you want it to be room temperature. That's what you're aiming for. So that's why everybody always says room temperature. And I don't know if you noticed these bowls. I love these. I got these at Amazon and they have little lids to them. Huh, brilliant. Okay, so I'm just going to cream my butter and sugar. And I'm actually going to also put in my vanilla. And let me get that going over here. I am putting in a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm making half of the recipe. I will put the recipe in the description box down below. I'm putting in the vanilla. And I'm also going to add some molasses here. It's in this little cup here. And here's another little baking tip. Bakeries usually put molasses or honey or a converted sugar in their baked goods so they can keep that moist chewiness that we all like with cookies. That's the secret. So this recipe is already called for molasses because it's an oatmeal cookie. But just so you know, you can do that for yourself. And all you do is just add about a tablespoon or two into your recipe and reduce your recipe's sugar about 15-25%. And then you'll get this cookie that's nice and moist. And molasses works great for oatmeal cookies, chocolate cookies, any of those cookies that are kind of a darker base, kind of spiced. And then honey works really great for like sugar cookies, chocolate chip cookies, and chocolate chip cookies actually work really well with molasses as well. Okay, I'm going to turn this on. Hopefully you can still hear me. So while I'm doing this, mixing it all together, you can put in the chat what your favorite cookies are. And don't be embarrassed. Everybody has their favorites. I have a lot of favorites. I like baked goods, so it's pretty hard for me to find a cookie that I don't like. I'm getting this all mixed up here. And it looks like everything is nicely mixed. And let me show you. And the recipes usually say mix for like, 1 to 2 minutes until it's all fluffy. And I'm vegan. I also forgot to mention, one of the vestibular disorders I have is vestibular migraines, and there are a lot of food triggers. And so the recipes I'm going to be showing you, I'm going to be making the migraine friendly version, but in the recipe, it will show you that. Um, yeah, right? Yeah, all cookies are great. Um, so in the recipe, you will see that there'll be the regular version, and then off to the side, it'll say migraine friendly, and you'll see what you can use to substitute out. You can kind of see how this is mixed up on there. See, it looks nice and whippy. It's got some fluff to it. That's what you're looking for, where it looks like it's all fluffy and like almost like whipped cream. That's when you know you got a good mix. Okay, so we got that in there. And now we're going to add our flour. Like I said, this is organic flour. And you don't have to get the fancy stuff. I did the fancy stuff because I was doing a business and they were vegan cookies, and I wanted to make sure that everything was good quality because I wanted people to be able to eat the cookies and not have some of the aches and pains that we can get when we use regular baking goods that are often overprocessed and have stuff in them that our body doesn't recognize. So, oh, one more thing. Ha ha ha. Flour. And I'm also adding, if I can get the lid off here, my spices. So this has cinnamon, allspice, and baking soda, a little leavening agent there. So this cookie will have a little bit of a spice to it, which I think also fits David. He was a little spicy. If you've never read his story, I highly recommend it. First and Second Samuel is one of my favorite books in the Bible. I'm gonna mix all this up. Okay, I got that incorporated. And you just want to mix it until it's incorporated. You don't want to go overboard because that can create a flat cookie. Remember, you just whipped all this air into it and you want to keep that air in there. So now, since it's an oatmeal cookie, we're adding the oatmeal. I always just buy gluten-free, regular old-fashioned oatmeal. But when I do cookies, I will put the oatmeal into my little tiny food processor and break it up a little bit because it just makes for a better mouthfeel with cookies. And you can use the whole oat, but I just think for cookies, it just makes it a little bit better if some of the oats are broken up. And you can also just buy them. You can also just buy the quick oats. There's nothing wrong with that. Save yourself time. Um, I just do a lot of things with oatmeal, so I just buy it one way, and then I can just make it fit whatever I need. So now we're not going to use the mixer anymore because now we're getting to the fun stuff. So I'm going to get some of this off here. So, like I was saying earlier, I used to bake all the time with my grandmother. Every summer, I would spend with her, and she was always making cakes and pies and all kinds of things for people. And so my job was, of course, to lick the beaters. Um, and one year, she had to make 8 cakes. And yes, as the overachiever that I am, I was committed to licking all the beaters for all 8 cakes and licking all the bowls when she was done. And who got a tummy ache after? Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Yeah. But I mean, it's one of my favorite memories. But yeah, I was really sick. Okay. So I just kind of barely mix that in. As you can see here, it's not completely mixed in because I'm going to be adding these other ingredients, what I call the fun ingredients. And anytime you're adding ingredients to a cookie, you want to leave some flour or some oatmeal or something present. You don't want to have it overmixed because you want it that when you put these ingredients in, they have something to attach to and they can stay suspended in the cookie. So your goodies don't all just drop to the bottom. Uh, Sometimes you'll see recipes where they'll say you'll get your fun ingredients and you'll put them in flour and then you'll add them in. You just want to have a way that you can suspend your fun stuff in the recipe. And I just added pumpkin seeds. The regular recipe, I believe when I made it initially, I think it was sunflower seeds. I can't remember what I made, but I made something with sunflower seeds. But I've also made these cookies with walnuts and pecans. So whatever your thing is, put it in there. This is reduced sugar craisins. With dry fruits, a lot of times they put a lot of sugar in them. I don't want that. I already feel like it's pretty sugary enough. So I always get the reduced sugar ones. And then here, I don't know if you guys know about this. I didn't know about this until I had vestibular migraines. But this is a carob chip. I'm trying to get that in there. You can see it's a little bitty, tiny, thin little wafer looking thing. And it's made from the carob plant. And it is a substitute for chocolate. Now, it's like chocolate adjacent. If you tasted this, you would know kind of, sort of, that it was chocolate, kind of, but like some kind of chocolate maybe you've never had before, some fancy something. Um, and that's because it's not exactly chocolate, but it's a really great substitute. I have not been missing chocolate. I like chocolate, and if I can find something that makes me feel like I'm still getting it, I'm all in. And if you don't want to spend the money on carob chips, because these are kind of pricey, you can just use white chocolate chips. But if you get migraines, no chocolate chips, no chocolate. But of course, that's also debatable. Some people say you can. Oh, a couple little bits about carob. I'm actually going to toss these in here too. The original recipe actually had pretzels, but pretzels are a migraine trigger, believe it or not, because of the yeast and some of the spices that is in the recipe for them. So I just substituted it with kettle cooked chips. That's what this is. So you get a little bit of salty. So you're seeing that this is kind of a fun cookie, right? So you got some salty, you got a little bit of twang, you got some spice, you got some chocolate. Very David-esque, right? You got all the goodness. So some things about the carob chips, or just carob in general, because there's also carob powder, and that's what I make chocolate cookies with now. Um, so it it's great for digestion because it's high in fiber and um, ugh, mixing all this up here. It's great for digestion because it's high in fiber. It also helps with blood sugar regulation and it helps reduce cholesterol. And it's got great antioxidants in it, and it's got calcium, and it's caffeine and gluten free. So it hits a lot of really great health benefits and things to watch for. So I'm getting all my dough mixed up, and I'm remembering here that I did not add water to this because the dough's looking really stiff. So I'm going to do this at the last minute, which who knows what this will come out looking like. But that's what happens sometimes. You just kind of go, oopsie, forgot to do this. Add this in. So these are vegan cookies. So because it's a vegan cookie, we don't have that egg in there. And so the water helps to make up for some of the liquid that you lose with the egg. Some recipes will have you do like aquafaba or they'll have you do a flaxseed egg. Some cookies I'll do that with and some I don't. It kind of depends on what's in the cookie because flaxseed can sometimes change the texture, the structure of the cookie. It can make it kind of dense. Um, and I feel like this cookie already has enough going on in it. Okay, I think we're good here. So let me show you what we got in the bowl. You see that? Okay, so now I'm gonna walk over to the kitchen, over to the refrigerator, because there's magic YouTube moment here. Because I did not want to have us lose any time. Whoopsie, uh-oh, my camera's not following me. We're gonna, whoop, 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 whoop. My camera lost me. Hold on. I'm trying to get my camera to find me. Hello, camera. Oh, it's still not following me. Hello. Hello. See, when you don't have a production team, that's what happens. It's not following me. Okay. We're just gonna have to shift it around. Thanks for being patient. There we are. I guess maybe I was too far away. It was like, I can't recognize you anymore. Okay, so Now we are. We're back together again. So, what I have here is dough that I made yesterday. I have discovered over time that you really want to chill and or freeze your dough because the chilling, putting it in the refrigerator for at least an hour or two, helps the dough get more moisture in it, which will also help with that chewy, lovely texture that we like with cookies and helps the flavors kind of grow together better. And it also makes it where they actually keep a really great shape. Have you ever made cookies and they come out looking like I don't know, strange art? And so they're like, how do bakeries get the cookies looking so good? A lot of that is because they freeze the dough. So just so you know, I'm going to wash my hands here because we're ready to actually mess with the dough. And even though these are probably just going to be for me or my neighbors, if I can get some. And actually, my neighbors get cookies from me all the time. So they're used to it. I'm going to run my hands over here. Okay. So you can see what the dough looks like from the dough I made last night. So it's just frozen. And I used a 2-tablespoon scoop, which is what I have here, and I'll be using today. And so I'm going to put these on the baking sheet here and put these in the oven. And then we are going to talk about the first 8 verses of Psalm 119 while these bake. You want to separate them. I put them on parchment paper. I feel like you get a better cook. I mean, this is a non-stick pan, but I always feel like I get a better cook when I have parchment paper. And I've also found that when I have chocolate in cookies, it tends to stick to my pans. And so since this has those carob chips in there, I don't want to have to scrub any pans. Okay, so we're sticking these in the oven. There we are. And I'm going to grab my little timer here. And since those are frozen, we're going to set my timer for about 18 minutes. It's probably going to need a little bit longer than that, but it might be perfect. Who knows? We'll find out. So not to keep us longer than we need to, just trust that I will scoop these out with the scoop. This is the other way to get cookies that look similar. It's just scooping them out with the scoop in little balls. And when they're in the oven, they will flatten out and spread out. So, but I'm not going to do that now because I'm excited, guys. I want to get into talking about Psalm 119. Okay, so I'm going to put these in the refrigerator and I'll do this later. Hopefully I don't lose you guys again. Do you see me? Camera, do you see me? Hello. Okay. My crazy refrigerator. Stick that there and I'll finish that later. Yes, we stay connected. Okay, so let me clean off the countertop here. So we have a clean space. And let's just stick this over here. And actually, I'm also going to pour myself some tea. Because I always feel like if you're going to get together with people, you need to have a really great beverage. You need to have something to eat, which we're working on, and a great topic, which we're about to talk about. A great topic. God. So let me get my water over here. Hopefully my camera's still hanging out with me. So I'm just have some peppermint tea over here. And we can start talking about, and actually I'm just going to bring this tea kettle over here in case it runs low. Okay. Pull up my chair. And now we get to talk about the other fun thing. Okay. So, as I was saying earlier, we're talking about Psalm 119. And hold on a second. Oh, I have 2 cats. If you hear the jingling, they're over there being cats. I'm sure at some point in time you may see them. Never on the countertops. I do not like kitty cats on kitchen countertops. And if you ever want to know how I keep them off countertops, I'm more than happy to share with you. And no, it does not involve doing bodily harm. No animals are harmed here. I promise. Okay, so we're going to talk about the first 8 verses of Psalm 119, and like I said earlier, it is the Aleph stanzas, the Aleph stanza, and this first stanza really sets the mood for 119, in that it talks about how do you follow God with a whole heart. Oops. Oh. So it really challenges us to um, live in a way where we have oneness, a strong connection with God. And that's really hard. And I think a lot of times we think that we are doing that, but if we really stop and reflect on our thoughts and our behaviors, we'll see that we're not doing as great as we think that we are. So I'm going to read the verses so you know what we're dealing with. And then I'm just going to start going through the verses. Psalm 119, verses 1 through 8. How blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk according to the Lord's instructions. Happy are those who keep his decrees and seek him with all their heart. They do nothing wrong. They walk in his ways. You have commanded that your precepts be diligently kept. If only my ways were committed to keeping your statutes, then I would not be ashamed. When I think about all your commands, I will praise you with an upright heart when I learn the right judgments. When I learn your right judgments, I will keep your statutes, never abandon me. Okay. So I don't know if any of those verses kind of jumped out at you. And so my hope and my prayer is that as I just kind of share some of my thoughts and insights about what I get out of this first stanza, that you'll be, you know, listening to what God may be speaking to you. And please comment in the chat things that are resonating or not resonating, or you've got other thoughts and ideas, share. I mean, I want this to be a space where we can all edify each other and grow. I mean, we're in this together. We're in this crazy life together. And so the more encouragement and support we have, the better we will be. And so I want this to be a safe space for that. And the other thing I want to mention too is that I am not a Bible scholar. I am absolutely a Bible nerd. I love spending time in the Word. There's my Bible over here. I am notorious. If there's anybody out there that's ever worked with me, any of my friends, they know that pretty much every time we talk, I'm going to be like, "Oh my gosh, you will not believe what I saw in the Bible today. I read this part that I've read several times before, and it just hit me. And it made me think about this part of the Bible. And all this stuff kind of came together." So I'm that person who is always going to tell you some revelation that God has presented to them and be excited about it. So I'm absolutely a nerd. I love understanding God and just developing my relationship with Him. So you can see all these, look at all that stuff in there, right? I got tabs and all kinds of crazy stuff. So not a scholar, but definitely a nerd. And so hopefully my insights will help you develop your relationship with God as well. So starting off, okay, so let's talk about this first verse, Psalm 119, verse 1. That verse of how blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk according to the Lord's instructions. So that word blessed means happy. And I love this idea of, that we can be happy uh, and, but we only get that when we are blameless, meaning undefiled, and we walk in the Lord's instructions. Um, and if you're wondering, like, okay, what does blameless mean? Like, what does undefiled mean? So remember when I told you early on that this psalm links to other scriptures in the Bible. Well, this psalm connects with Psalm 1. Very lovely. If you've ever read Psalm 1, you know that it starts off talking about a blessed person does not do these things. And then it tells you that they don't, I'm sure you're right. It's like they don't walk with the wicked. They don't, I'm not sure. I think if they don't walk with the wicked, they don't um, stand on the path of sinners, and they don't sit with scoffers. I want to make sure I got it in right order. So it tells you what they don't do. And then it proceeds to tell you what a blameless person does and what is the outcome of that. And that next section is all about following God's way and his instructions and leaning into him for wisdom and guidance. But here's the thing about this: we think that happiness comes separate from that. I mean, when you talk to most people, and if you just kind of look around, you society doesn't send that message that in order to be happy, you need to follow God. We tend to live in a way that says, oh, happiness is doing whatever I want, how I want, when I want. And as a therapist who sits across from a lot of people, I've been doing therapy over 20 years. I can very safely say that we are not a happy society. We are not doing well. I just finished reading Levi Lesko's book, Blessed Are the Spiraling, and he talked about research that showed that in the 50s, the average woman owned about 39 pieces of clothing. And today, the average woman has about 150, 160 articles of clothing. I think those women were lying. I think we have more than that. Maybe I'm just telling on myself. I don't know. But that's the difference. And also, 70 years ago, the average home was 900 square feet, and today's average home is 2,500 square feet. So we have bigger homes, we have 3 cars, we have tons of credit card debt, we have storage units filled to the sky with a bunch of stuff that we never use or see. And I don't know. I mean, do you get the sense that we're happy? I don't get that. You know, in the 60s, there was this push to kind of break the chains of traditional ways of being. And the traditional ways of being was God's law. And people just started gradually each decade shifting away from that. And now we're in this place where we have lots of things and we have social media so we can stay connected, but we're not really connected. I mean, as a therapist, I saw the issues with social media before it became something that people research. I saw that we were having a loneliness epidemic before it became a topic of newspaper articles. I'm like, we're not doing well. And I think the further we step away from following God's instructions, the unhappier we get. And we just try and fill it with food and cars and clothes and all these things. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. I mean, I don't think it works. It doesn't work for me. When I have tried to do that, it has not worked. And ultimately, I always come back to God. And if you've had a different experience, uh, that's amazing. But it just has not been my experience at all. Which brings me to the next part that we want to talk about is that second verse. Happy are those who keep his decrees and seek him with all their heart. And I think this really ties into that walking in the Lord's instructions. Part of walking in the Lord's instructions is seeking after him. If in order to follow the instructions, you got to know what the instructions are. And we tend to follow instructions of people that we know and that we respect. The when we know about them, the more of a reputation they have for being honorable and wise and respectful, then we're going to be more than likely to follow the instructions. And so if you never pick up with your Bible and you don't know the instructions, you don't spend time to get to know God, not just his word, but to get to know who he is, then you're going to have a really hard time being excited about spending time with him. And I have 4, you can say, theories about why it's hard for us to seek after God with our whole heart. And these are just my theories based on me, what I've heard in the therapy room, conversations with other Christians, just observations. Some research is behind this too. So it's not all just my opinion. but just kind of living this life. I have these four hypotheses. And if you have other theories, jot them down in the comments. I want to hear them. And if any of these theories resonate with you, you can jot that down there too. Okay, so my first theory is lack of understanding. Okay, let's just be real. If you are new to the faith and you crack open this book and you start reading, I mean, you know it's English, right? Like the words are English. I mean, if you're in the United States or you're an English speaking country, it's not a matter of like, I don't understand the words, but I don't understand the word, right? Because you're talking about something that was written thousands upon thousands of years ago about a culture that we are no longer connected to in any meaningful way. I mean, does any like, are you a shepherd? Do you know a shepherd? I don't know a shepherd. I've never met a shepherd. So you're seeing all these things from thousands of years ago about a culture that you have no awareness of, written by a being that has been around since before anything was around, who decided one day, huh, let there be light. And there was light. And then thought, let's separate these waters and have a heaven and the earth. And let's separate the water on the earth. Let's put some masses in there to break up the chaos. And the spirit was hovering over that water. Like just you're talking about a long time ago, and an entity that doesn't think like we think and doesn't have ways like our ways. And I think sometimes we go to it because it's a book and we open it up and we think we're just going to understand. And when we don't, we're like, well, I don't get it. Shut the book. Let me walk away. Oh, I can't get it. Right? It's almost like what we do with baking. Try to make these cookies. They came out horrible. I'm never going to do it again. It's too hard. And there's got to be a part of us that gets to be okay with the not knowing and being curious and seeking out ways to know. Because this is literally his love letter to us. He he like divinely inspired every word in this book and had men write it down so we know exactly who he is and how he sees us and how he loves us and how in his character. And to go, I don't get it, I'm done. I mean, I get it, it's hard. I mean, when I was growing up, I learned from King James Bible, and that is not easy. And then when I started really like wanting to really understand and get it, then I switched to NIV. And then as I started learning more, I thought, oh, well, I want to know, I want to make sure I'm getting the right message, right? So I went to Bible translations that had a different message. And so right now, there's really no excuse to say I don't understand and just pull away. And I've learned that when I come across scripture that I read and I'm like, oh, that makes me uncomfortable. God, that just sounds harsh and mean. I've read so much about him that I know him to be a good God that when I come across those passages that really made me uncomfortable, and I'm like, and I feel that tug to like, well, I'll follow this, but not this. I'm like, no, no. There's something that I don't understand. There's information that I don't have. I'm going to get more curious and make sure that I understand before I say, nope, I'm going to do this, but not this. And so it's got to be this being okay with being uncomfortable in the not knowing and getting curious and asking questions and seeking out translations and information to help it make sense for you. And honestly, in this day and age, there really is no excuse. So to say, well, I can't understand it and it's too hard and I'm not going to do it. I mean, that's just, I mean, in my opinion, that's just willfully being ignorant and disobedient because you can find a lot of resources that can help this make sense. But I think we just go to it thinking that we're just going to open up this book and just get it. And this is God. You're not just going to get it. He's going to have to divinely show things to you, and you're going to have to be curious and put in a little bit of elbow grease. So that's my first theory. The second theory I have is fear. Fear, we fear him. We think, man, if I hang out with God and I start praying to him and I start asking him for what he wants me to do and I start learning his word, he's going to send me to Africa to talk to some kids in some village that I've never heard of and in a language that I don't know, and I'm going to have to learn this language. And oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Okay, to his credit, the more you get close to him and listen to him, he does have you do some really scary things. However, He's not going to have you do something that is so far outside of who you are and your personality that it's not even going to make sense. He's going to stretch you. Don't get me wrong. He's going to stretch you. I mean, I'll give you an example. So a few years ago, I finished a therapy session. I'm checking on the cookies because I'm impatient. Whoop, those bad boys are done. I'm glad I looked. Ooh, these look a little flat. I think maybe, I think maybe when I did the dough yesterday, I think this is a good example of the butter being too soft. So you get a little bit of flat cookie. So see, even bakers mess it up sometimes. And you know what? I'm going to show you a little trick of what you do when this happens. What you do is you get one of these little doohickeys like this, and I'm hoping you can see this. So push and pause for a second. We're going to come back. Little impromptu. This is what you do to make this look all pretty. Like, oh yes, this just happens, and you just make it better. Get this little thing here, and you put it around the edge of the cookie. Bump, bump, bump. And you get it in there, and then you swish it around, and look at that. It's shaped just like a regular cookie. Now the trick is you have to get to the cookie when it's still warm, and you have to kind of like scrape it up in there. And hopefully you can see me doing this, kind of doing it fast and loose. But when I do that, the cookie doesn't look so crazy. And now when it cools, it'll have more of that perfect little shape that we like. So see, even I, who bakes cookies really all the time, put those little pieces up there. So now I can show you with a little bit of shaping how they look now. See, look a little bit different. They don't look so crazy. So you can still salvage them. You know what? They're still going to be great. Okay. So back to my little story. So a few years ago, finished a therapy session, and I said, God, I need for you to talk to, I need for you to talk to Lisa Turkhurst and Brene Brown, and I want you to have them write a book about healing from trauma with faith and science. I need for you to get them to write that book. And God said, you write the book. I was like, that is crazy. Absolutely not. And I proceeded to tell him why that was absolutely crazy and ludicrous. One, I'm not a Bible scholar. And he says, yeah, but you do know a whole lot about the Bible. And I was like, well, I am not a trauma researcher. Somebody with a research history needs to have that. He's like, yeah, but you do have a clinical psychology degree. You do know how to do research. And you have a PhD. Huh. I said, well, I just don't know enough. And he's like, but you're really curious. You know how to ask questions. So I left work, went to church that night, talked with the pastor of my church, and he was like, I told him what I had told God, and he was like, you'd be the best person to write this book. And I was like, no. And I gave him all the reasons I gave God. And you know what he did? He gave me every single response that God did. Every single one of them. He's like, you got a PhD. I've heard you talk about the Bible. You know a lot about the Bible. You can ask questions. I'll help you. I was like, oh my gosh, you and God have been talking about me behind my back. And he's like, well, it sounds like you're going to be writing a book. So still not convinced. I was trying to figure out how can I get around this. And can I just say, by the way, I pretty much came out of the womb with a book and a pen. I love reading and I love writing. I got a journalism degree. So it's not really completely far-fetched for me to write a book. I'm just saying. Okay. So I go to Target and I see a mom and her toddler, and she's picking the little boy up and changing his diaper. And he starts crying when she lifts him up and puts him on the little diaper changing station. And she's like, what's wrong? And he's like, I'm scared. She's like, what are you scared about? It's like, I'm afraid I'm going to fall. And she says, well, do you think mommy loves you? Yes. Do you think mommy would put you someplace that you would get hurt? He's like, no. Well, then why are you acting like it? And I could just about see God leaning down going, yes. Why are you acting like I'd put you someplace that would, you know, be awful and I wouldn't be with you? And so, yeah, I wrote the book. But that's a real deal, though, right? Like, we're afraid if I move in close to God, He's going to have me do something that I don't want to do. And there is truth to that. And it will stretch you and it will be scary. But here's the thing, He's in it with you. And here's the other thing, Jesus really had to go through some stuff. Rarely are any of us going to have to suffer the same way He did. We're going to have to suffer, we're going to have pain, but He's going to be with us. He's not going to just throw us up there and just leave us there and be like, have a nice life, see you in heaven. He's going to be with us. And I read this book a few years ago by Craig Groeschel called Dangerous Prayers, and they really are dangerous prayers. They're great prayers. But it talks about this idea about sometimes we don't go to God and we don't pray the big prayers because we're afraid. And this is the sentence that just stuck out to me. And I read this book like 6 years ago, and it still resonates with me. He said, "Where you fear the most is where you trust God the least." So when you are fearful of going to God and leaning in and seeking His will and following His instructions, that is a trust issue. And I want to be to the place where God asks me to do something and I don't go back and forth. I still go back and forth. Ugh, I still go back and forth. But one day He's going to ask me to do something. I'm going to be like, okay, let's go. I've gotten better. I don't volley as much, but I still volley. We're working on it. I'm a work in progress. So that's number two. We don't understand and we are fearful. The next one is shame. This is a big one. Nobody likes to talk about shame. Nobody likes to talk about it. I mentioned this to clients and they're like, oh, I'm not feeling shame. I'm like, yeah, you are. Shame is the idea that there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm flawed. And when people discover this thing about me, they're going to reject me. I'm going to be left alone. And so we do all these things to try and cover this up. It's a big deal. It's so big, in fact, that it is the first emotion mentioned in the Bible. Yes, go check it out. I promise. It's the first emotion. It's at the very end of chapter 2 in Genesis, where it says, they were naked and there was no shame. And then we get to chapter 3 with the lovely conversation between Eve and the serpent. And then they're hiding out with fig leaves, feeling shame. So now, here's the thing about shame, because we're all going to have it, right? We're all going to have life experiences that give us this sense of we're being rejected or ostracized or set apart. And as a Christian, you definitely are going to feel that I'm set apart. I'm different. I don't fit. You're supposed to feel like you don't fit because you should not fit in the world. Okay. And some people are going to reject you. The problem is when we feel shame, we tend to hunker down in it and hide. But here's the thing. I love one day when I realized the response that Adam had, which showed me just how big of a hold shame has on us. When God gave the and I'm kicked out. Okay. I don't know. I don't know. Can you still hear me? Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Technical glitch. Okay. Sorry about that technical glitch. Okay. So like I was saying, um, when God gave the initial instructions to Adam and Eve in the garden, this is this is what he said. There are two trees you can eat from any tree. There are two trees. One is good for it's pleasing to the eye, it's good for food, eternal life. The other one, pleasing to the eye, good for food, good for the knowledge of good and evil. And if you eat from the good and evil tree, you're going to die. So they eat from the tree, they freak out. God shows up, asks them first, where are you? You already knew the answer. He was asking them to get them to understand, hey, do you get that you've done something that has separated you from me, that you are no longer in close relationship with me? Do you get that? So it wasn't a shaming kind of question. It was like, do you understand what's just happened? Do you see where you are? You've drifted. Then the second question, because Adam answers, yeah, we heard you. And we were afraid because we were naked and we hid. And God asked, who told you that you were naked? Because guys, they were always naked. They were always just walking around, spanks free, right? And now all of a sudden, the devil does some couple of word changes and gets Eve to start thinking about herself, and poof, just like that. Now they're no longer comfortable in their own skin. They're running around trying to find fig leaf spanks and Clairol, right? And it's like, wait a minute, you were just okay. Who are you listening to? And that's what shame does. And I kind of think of shame, and I came across research about this, and I actually have done some videos on shame on this channel. And here's the thing about shame. It's it's the same coin, but flip side of pride. Pride, you're thinking about yourself. Shame, same thing. How I see myself, what I think about myself, it's true. Totally ignoring everything that God has said about you, right? And so you don't go to God. Instead, you've done this thing and you go hide. You go get your fig leaves, whether that fig leaf is overeating, overworking, over physical intimacy, pornography, Netflix, you name the over or the under. Just walking through life like a zombie. That's what shame does. And the devil knows it. And that keeps us from going to God. God told them if you did this, you would die. It didn't even occur to Adam that death was on the line, that the separation from God was on the line. That didn't even occur to him. It was me and just being me. Ugh, that's the problem. Do you see how major shame is? And what did God do? He showed up. He didn't throw lightning bolts and try and, stomp him out or anything. He showed up and was like, hey, had a conversation with him. Okay. And then the next thing I want to bring up, and this is really the fourth thing, but it's in the same body of things. And I promise you the next verses will go so much faster. I promise. Um, but the next thing, the other one is knowledge. So I want to go back to that conversation between Eve and the serpent. So Eve says, oh no, he didn't say we just can't touch the tree, or which he didn't say. He said, don't eat from the tree. And the devil was like, oh, no. You're fine. You can go ahead and do your thing. And then Eve looked at the tree and thought, oh, now I see that the tree is pleasing to the eye, correct? And it's good for food, correct? And it's good for wisdom. Wrong. Incorrect answer. We oftentimes do not seek after God because we think our knowledge, what we're learning in school, is wisdom. Just like Eve, we confuse knowledge and wisdom. And I'm not saying that the world doesn't have wisdom, it does. But God is the provider of wisdom, not a tree. Not a tree. God provides wisdom. And if you don't get in this book and understand the creator of wisdom, the being of wisdom, your wisdom's going to have a pretty short lifespan. And there's so many of us walking around, and this is also Christians too. This is not just non-Christians. This is Christians. We have a lot of knowledge about the Bible, but we don't have any wisdom. And this was the problem with the Pharisees. They could quote the Torah, but could not recognize when the Torah was standing in front of them. They just couldn't see it. Knowledge is not wisdom. Those are very different things. And a lot of times we will go to the world for something that it wasn't designed. And that's exactly what Eve was trying to do. That's like me going to my partner and expecting them to make me happy. My partner wasn't designed to make me happy. My partner was designed to be a helpmate, to be a support, to be somebody to walk in connection to through this life together. They're not supposed to make me happy. God is responsible for that. And I get that happiness when I follow his instructions. See, and so when we get that confused about, oh, I get all this world knowledge and then I'm wise and I'm fine and I don't need to go to the Bible and I don't need to seek after God because I know things. But knowing knowledge and knowing the creator of science and psychology, let me tell you, there's nothing I'm teaching anybody in a therapy session that does not come from this book. I promise you. My master's was from a Christian university. There's nothing I'm sitting across from a client telling them that is not found in this book. It may have different words, fancy little titles and stuff to make it sound all good and fancy. But the last verse, I will keep your statutes, never abandon me. And I love this line because there is a humbleness to this. Like, I will learn something, like I will get an insight about something that I've read and I'll understand God in a new way. And I'm like, I want to remember this because I don't want to be called to the mattress on this, right? Like I want to like cement this in my mind. And then fast forward a year and I'll find myself doing that very thing I said I don't want to do. And I'm like, ugh. But I think it's recognizing that we can't do this on our own. 9 months. He wants to love on us. We just got to want to love on him too. Okay. So I'm going to wrap it up. But before we go, I'm going to ask you 4 questions because I want you to have a response to this. I don't want this just to be information. I want it to plant a seed that becomes fruit, not just for you, but also fruit for other people to um, gain from. So I can tell you what I'm doing. I got this lovely journal from one of my friends, and I'm just doing the Matthew Henry thing, writing a verse down and writing down, and I've done this before, this is my second time to do this, and writing down my thoughts, finding other scriptures that supports that, and asking God, like, what do you want me to see about you now? What do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? Um, and making these verses speak directly to me. But I'm going to give you 4 questions to think about. These first 2 questions are going to be the questions I ask you every single time. The first question is, what did you learn about God? As I talked about all these verses. The other one is, where is Jesus in the verses? Um, and I'll just be honest with you that, I mean, like, he is literally the only person who has done all of these verses. But there's also some specific things where you can see, oh, yeah, this was definitely a Jesus move here, right? And then these 2 are more specific to you. What is keeping you from seeking God with your whole heart? And like I said, it could be one of those 4 things I mentioned. It could be something else. And be real because you can't heal what you don't reveal. Like I told you guys, like all 4 of those I have done and will do in the future because I'm a human being and I'm in progress. I'm learning. Okay. And then the 4th one is, in what area of your life can you resolve to obey God's word more diligently? In what area of your life can you resolve to obey God's word more diligently? I'm going to put these 4 questions in the description down below. So if you didn't get them, that's okay. I'll put the recipe down below. The recipes will always be down there, again, with the regular recipe and the migraine friendly recipe. Um, every time we get together, which will be on the 2nd and 4th Saturday of the month, the next videos hopefully will not be this long. I wanted to bring an introduction about Psalm 119, and we had some technical issues. I'm going to try and get those worked out. So I won't be keeping you so long next time. But thank you for your patience and hanging in there with me. And I really hope that when we're done with this by the end of the year, that you love this psalm, but more importantly, you love God, the one who inspired men to even write the psalm in the first place, and that you learn more about him and you learn more about yourself, and you find yourself just seeking after him a lot more. And so I'm gonna grab one of these cookies they've cooled off, and then I'm gonna say goodbye. Let me grab one of these cookies over here so it doesn't look as crazy as it did before. Maybe a little bit overcooked. Let me show you. Oh, look at that. That's great. Okay. So I'm gonna eat this lovely cookie, and and I'm gonna let you get with your day. I've kept you way longer than I intended. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I look forward to seeing you on February 14th, Valentine's Day, for the second video, and that will be on Psalm 119 verses 9 through 16. And I'll see you then. Until then, Thank you so much for hanging out with me and choose joy. Take care. Bye. Oh, 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 oh. Mm, messy, messy eating. Bye.